Hello fellow storytellers, this is Mark Graham with the Source of Story YouTube channel and Runes for Writers. This is our final edition of our exploration into the runes, their meanings, their sound values, and their interpretations within our Runes for Writers runecastings. So we are on the final 4 runes, the second half of the third 8, and this set begins with Laguz. Laguz is the L sound. Its literal meaning is lake or water. And with that, we get a sense of emotions. We get a sense of those still waters run deep type of emotions. So this is in distinction to the open sea, right? The waters of a lake can be explored. They can be circumnavigated. You can know all the terrain around a lake. You may not be able to plumb its depths entirely, depending how deep it is. You may not want to, depending on how cold it is. But you can know all of the terrain surrounding this lake, though the innermost depths may always be a mystery. This in contradistinction to the open sea, whose bounds really today we can say that they can be known, but in the early days of seafaring, the open sea could never be fully explored, and many people died trying. So we see in this a bit of safety, and in that, with that knowing, that understanding, at least of the bounds of this emotional construct, there can then be a sense of personal connection, of an emotional connection between one another. There can also be seen in the wave caps, in the rolling waves. We see in the shape of this rune sort of a wave crest. And so in that we also get a sense of an ebb and a flow, of a natural cycle, a natural rhythm. And we see that we go through these in healthy emotional changes and challenges, that one day can be good, the next day perhaps not so good. And so we do go through waves and ebbing and flowing within our emotions. And reversed, we can get a sense of not necessarily ill emotions. Emotions good and bad are kind of covered in that upright position of being connected to those emotions, but we really get a sense of apathy, of an absence of emotions or of healthy emotions. It can be a sense of suppressed emotions, of emotional disconnect, of to some degree mental health. We saw mental health in the last video when we talked about manage reversed, but this would be that mental health that has its basis in a disconnect from one's own emotions and inner life. And that is Laguz, rune number 21, the 5th rune of the third 8. Next up is Ingwaz. Now, Ingwaz is another unique rune in that while we do have these sounds in English, they're made up of the 2 letters in G, but this ing sound was a standalone sound symbol, a standalone rune within the Elder Futhark. And its literal meaning is the name of the god Ingvi, or Ingwaz, which is another name for Frey, one of the Vanir gods, who is a fertility god and an earth deity. And depending on your ancestry, your family traditions, there is in certain Germanic cultures the notion of the Ingelnook. This was a name for the family hearth. And this was more than just a place to hold the fire in. This was where the relics of the ancestors would have been gathered together. We see this in modern culture, in the placing of family photos on the mantle above the fireplace. We see this to some degree in the hanging of our stockings on the mantle to receive the gifts of the ancestors. And so we see kind of in the shape of this rune, it's a spark or an ember, the flame seed, if you will. And so we get that notion with this rune. So upright, we get a sense of inspiration, of incubation, of an inner drive. We get a sense of that inner spark coming out and coming to life with incubation. Shares a similar root word to all of these. That sense of life growing within a shell until it can no longer be contained and it bursts out into external life. We get the ember that glows and glows and glows and is fed and fed until it bursts outward into flame and engulfs the fuel, the tinder, the log. So that's the sense that we get with this. This is a self-contained fire that, similarly to Uruz, is now bursting forth into outer expression. This rune cannot be reversed, so it is also a very benefic rune that shows that a time has come, that the period of incubation, the period of introspection is done, and it's time for that fire to be released, to be expressed and exploded into the outer world. And that is Ingwaz, the 22nd rune and 6th rune of the third 8. Next up is Dagaz, or Dayaj in some pronunciations. And this rune literally means day. It's the D sound. It's also the vocalized TH sound that you see in there, them. And I see in the shape of this rune the melding of shadows as the sun sets. You have darkness coming in from one side, you have the long shadow being cast by the other. This is perhaps, we see this here in Colorado. The ancient Norse would have seen this among their mountains and hills in the fjords, of that long shadow coming off where you can't tell where the mountain ends and the shadow begins. That sort of imagery. I see also in this rune a balance between sunrise and sunset, between day and night, those twilight hours. And so in this rune, we get a sense of that cycle of day and night, light and dark, waking and sleep. There's a sense of awakening when we see the flip side of this. I see in this rune also a sense of reward, as you've been out hunting or working the fields or tending the nets by day, and now the sun is sinking toward the horizon, the day is coming to an end, and it's time to go home to your family, to your hearth, to your fire, to warmth and food and rest. And there's that sense of completion, of reward, of that blessing and joy in this homecoming. And we'll get to homecoming in the next rune as well, but there's a foretaste of that in Dagaz. Dagaz cannot be reversed. It's also a very benefic rune. So again, with dramatic storytelling, this rune can be challenging for the storyteller. It's great for the character or the subject of the rune casting. As a storyteller, depending how and where it shows up, could present some challenges in how do I present conflict with this. But again, as we'll get into later, depending on its location in the rune casting, its relation to other runes, will give you some ideas and some ways to address this. But that is Dagaz, the 23rd rune and 7th of the final 8. So here it is, finally the last rune of this video, of this 8, and of the Elder Futhark themselves. This is Othala. And Othala literally means inheritance. It is the O sound. And I see in the shape of this rune the timber framing of the family homestead, the hall. And we get in this the sense of a reward, but it's not necessarily a reward for anything you've done. It's simply for being in the family, for being in good standing with the family, not having been outcast or rejected or exiled, or not having voluntarily removed yourself from the family setting. So this is a sense of, there's a sense of home, of security with this rune, a mild sense of reward, though there's really nothing to have been done but to stay within the family, to remain within the continuity, to simply to have been around long enough and not to have pissed anyone off badly enough that they rejected you. And so simply by staying the course, by remaining true to one's ancestors, one's familial duty and responsibilities, this is your eventual reward. Reversed, we get the opposite of this. This is a sense of exile. This is rejection. This is abandonment. This can also be a sense of homelessness, if we want to kind of bring this into more of a modern parlance and vernacular. So the idea that all one had to do was simply keep his nose clean and not take anyone off too badly, and the reward would have come. But no. The reward, the easiest reward to attain ever, has been taken, has been withheld. It could also have been rejected. This can also be a voluntary removal from the family situation. A Viking who left his home to go across the sea to fight for another king or to find his own homestead to pass on to his inheritors, to his progeny, would be Othala reversed in the old country, but a new Othala for his family to come. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on how you wish to interpret it, how you envision this rune in your own setting. But there is upright a sense of family and continuity, reversed a break with that continuity, with the ancestors, with the tradition. And that is Othala. That is our final rune. So thank you for taking part in this video series. I hope it's helped. Go back and watch these as you need to, and through repetition, through your own experience with all of the runes, you'll begin to develop your own vocabulary, your own glossary. And I encourage you to do that, to find your own meanings and shorthand for each of these runes, upright and reversed. And again, as we'll get into, I believe, in the next series of these videos, we're going to explore deeper meanings of the runes, deeper ways of interpreting them, depending upon position within a rune casting, relationship to runes around them, to their native positions. We'll discuss all of these things. So this is just a really almost an infinite variety of interpretations. But what I've hoped to do here is to give you at least a foothold, a cursory understanding of the basic definition and interpretations of these runes, to give you a basis for your own growth and development and evolution of your interpretations of the rune castings. So I hope this has been helpful. If you've enjoyed this series, if you're enjoying this exploration into the runes, please subscribe, like, share this channel, particularly among your fellow storytellers. And visit my website, mark-graham.com. Subscribe to my newsletter check out my tidbits on writing in general, my personal writing, and other explorations beyond just these runes. So, my friends, thank you for your attention. I am Mark Graham with the Source of Story YouTube channel and Runes for Writers. I appreciate your time and attention. I look forward to hearing your story with the runes. '20th.